I'm Nora Whitfield, 60 years old, and I will tell this fast, before the fear learns to speak for me. 3 days ago, our own sun tried to erase us. The sky over Red Cedar Gorge was a sharp, open blue, the kind that looks innocent from far away. Trevor said the light was perfect. Lila held a new camera and kept laughing like this was a small family trip, not a plan. My husband, Cal, walked slow behind me. He pressed 2 fingers to the side of his jacket, like a habit, like a promise. We had talked about that phone before we left, how it would stay on, how it would hear what our mouths might not get a chance to say. "Just a little farther," Lila sang, pointing to a rock shelf that hung over the valley. The river below looked like a thin ribbon, neat and harmless from up high. The trail forked, left to the marked overlook, right to a thin line of loose stone and scrub. Lila went right. Trevor waited for us to follow, polite smile, patient eyes. He had his father's shoulders and my mouth. It hurt to look at his face. "We can stop here," I tried. My voice was light, like I was talking to a student who wanted to run in the hall. "My knees don't like surprises." "Mom," Trevor said gently. 2 minutes. "You'll love the view." His hand came to my elbow. It felt careful and strong at the same time. Cal squeezed my fingers once. I read the squeeze like a sentence. "Keep going." We climbed. The ground changed under our boots. Pebbles that rolled, dirt that didn't hold, patches of dry grass with roots too small to trust. Lila moved easily, turning now and then to frame us with the camera. Click, click. The sound was small and bright. For a second I thought of birthday parties, of grandkids with frosting on their cheeks. The thought passed like a bird shadow. "Right there," she said, pointing to a flat stone near the edge. Together, arms around each other, the valley behind. Cal and I stepped where she showed us. Wind lifted my hair and put a taste of metal in my mouth. I could feel the drop without seeing it. I stared at the horizon so I wouldn't stare down. "Perfect," Lila whispered, backing up. "Hold it." Trevor came up behind us, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him through my jacket. He didn't smell like sawdust and oil like Cal does. He smelled like clean soap and something sharp that I couldn't name. "Just 1 step back," he said. "Gives us more sky." My body knew before my mind did. The air around us thinned. Cal shifted his weight. I saw his jaw tighten. I heard the small grind of stone under Trevor's boot. The lunge was not big. It didn't need to be. An elbow at my shoulder. A palm at Cal's back. Boots scrambling. Ours, his, all of it mixing together. The world tipped the wrong way. The sky slid. My stomach went light and cold, and then there was only sound. The hiss of wind. Lila's sharp inhale. My own voice leaving me without words. Impact. Stone, bone, breath exploding out of my chest. The world flashed white and then turned to a red with edges. I lay twisted, one arm under me, face against gritty rock. The smell of dust and iron. Somewhere above, a gull called like nothing had happened at all. I tried to move and couldn't. Pain crackled through my ribs like dry twigs. My ears rang, but I heard Cal. He was close enough that I could feel the heat of him. Through gravel and blood, he found my name. "Nora, don't move. Pretend we're dead." His voice had a thin thread of steel in it, something I had only heard once before, long ago. I let my eyelids sink until the world was a thin slit of light. I slowed my breath until even I couldn't hear it. I counted the beats in my chest and told each one to be quiet. Above us, voices. Lila, higher now, breathy. "Oh my God. Oh my God." Trevor's voice was lower. I couldn't catch the words yet, just the shape of them. The shape did not sound like a sun. I stared at the grit in front of my eye. One grain looked like glass. It held a tiny sky inside it. If I looked at that, I didn't have to look at the drop. A stone skittered. Footsteps shifted closer, then away. We'll call from higher up, Trevor said, clearer now. No signal here. The words landed wrong in my ear, too neat, like lines he had practiced. Cal's hand found mine, not a squeeze this time, just a touch that said I'm here. I kept my face still, my mouth soft, my breathing thin. The valley wind moved over us like a slow tide. Somewhere far away, a siren began, thin at first, then growing, finding the shape of the gorge. I told myself not to blink. I told myself not to cough. I told myself not to remember. But memory is louder than pain. This wasn't the first time a fall had changed our family. The sirens grew closer, bouncing off stone. Boots thudded on the main trail above, voices calling to each other, the sharp clink of metal gear. Playing dead had saved people in stories. I didn't know if it would save us. I only knew we had to try. The wind shifted again, and for a heartbeat I saw Trevor's shadow cut across the rock beside my cheek. Would pretending to be dead save us, or finish what he started? Before the sirens, before the blood, there was Maple Hollow. Our town was small enough that everyone waved, but big enough to hide a secret if you wanted to. Every morning, I walked across the schoolyard with a tin mug of coffee, children running in circles, shoes squeaking against the painted hopscotch squares. I taught letters and colors, sang nursery rhymes until my voice went soft. At dismissal, little hands clutched mine, and I went home carrying drawings of houses, sons, and stick families with smiles too wide for their faces. Cal's shop sat behind our house, its roof low and its windows always dusty with sawdust. If you stood in the doorway, you'd smell walnut, cedar, pine, all braided together. Cal could take a plank as ordinary as a fence board and cut it, sand it, shape it into something that belonged in a family forever. His knuckles were scarred, his palms rough, but when he smoothed oil into the wood, the piece looked alive. He said wood had memory, and if you worked with it, not against it, it would never betray you. On Sundays, our kitchen filled with voices. My sisters, June and Irene, carried baskets of cornbread, jars of pickles, stories about husbands who never listened and children who never stopped. Cal made stew in a heavy iron pot, the same way every time. Onions first, then carrots, then beef. The house steamed with warmth, and laughter bounced from the walls. Our two boys were different as dawn and dusk. Aaron, our firstborn, was sunlight. He filled a room before he even spoke. He helped Cal in the shop, whistled while sweeping sawdust, carried my grocery bags without being asked. His laughter had weight. It steadied me on tired days. Trevor, 5 years younger, carried shadows even in summer. He wasn't cruel, just quiet. While Aaron played baseball, Trevor read in the corner, his eyes sharp and his mouth closed. He didn't like hugs. He didn't like questions. He would sit at the table, fork moving food more than eating it, and I'd tell myself, he's just thoughtful. He'll bloom later. One spring, Cal decided to carve a table we could all grow around. Walnut boards lay across sawhorses for weeks, and every night after dinner, Aaron fetched clamps, and Trevor held the lamp. Cal's chisel moved steady, chip by chip. He shaped legs strong enough to last a century. He sanded the surface smooth as skin, then burned our initials into the underside. When it was finished, we carried it inside. Heavy, but worth every strain. I ran my palm across it, and it felt like promise. That table became the heart of our home. June and Irene set pies on it. Aaron spread his geometry books across it. Trevor traced the grain with his finger, but never spoke about what he saw. At night, I read stories to them there. Tales about knights who stood for the weak, children who found courage in dark forests. Aaron leaned close, asking questions. Trevor leaned back, silent, his eyes unreadable. I told myself both were listening, just in their own ways. That's what mothers do. We choose hope. Looking back now, I see how that table held more than meals and books. It held the weight of silence. It soaked in laughter and secrets the same way. I believed then that safety was something you could build with your hands. Sand smooth, oil well, tighten with joints that wouldn't slip. I know better now. Because wood can last 100 years. But family? Family can crack in one night. It was October when the night bent our family. Aaron was 20 then, tall and lean, the kind of boy who whistled even when he had nowhere to go. That evening, he promised he'd be back for stew. I remember stirring the pot, setting bowls, listening for his boots on the porch. The clock ticked past 8, then 9. At 10, Cal paced. At 11, I stepped outside and called his name into the dark street. No answer. By midnight, the town gathered. Lanterns bobbed like fireflies down alleys, across fields into the woods by the river. I walked between my sisters, June and Irene, clutching my shawl, whispering Aaron's name until my throat hurt. At dawn, the search slowed at Horseshoe Cut, a narrow gorge where the river bent sharp. I smelled the water before I saw it. Cold, mossy, carrying a weight I couldn't name. 2 men pulled Aaron's body from the rocks below. His jacket was torn, his face pale, his hand still curled as if it had tried to hold on to something. The sheriff said it was an accident. Too dark, too late, one wrong step. His words were steady, practiced. People nodded, grateful for an explanation that ended the night. But nothing ended for me. I collapsed into Cal's arms, shaking, begging God for one more breath in my boy's chest. My sisters cried with me, their tears falling on my hair. We buried Aaron in the churchyard, where the ground was soft and the maples turned red as if the trees themselves were bleeding. Trevor stood at my side. His face was calm, too calm. I thought it was shock. I thought grief had frozen him. While I wept until I could not breathe, Trevor watched the ground as if the dirt itself might speak. And then, so suddenly I almost didn't notice, he changed. He started sweeping the porch without being asked. He offered to carry groceries. He followed Cal into the shop, sanding edges, fetching nails. He brought me tea on nights when I sat at the window too long. His voice softened, his hands steadied. Everyone said, "What a good boy," stepping up after his brother's death. They called him dutiful, attentive. They told me I was lucky to have a son like Trevor left. I wanted to believe them. And maybe I did, but a mother's heart keeps 2 clocks, one for what she sees and one for what she feels. And the clocks did not match. Cal said little. Too little. He worked long hours at the shop, his back turned, sawdust in his hair. At night he held me but spoke as if every word cost him. I thought it was grief too. Only much later did I learn grief was not the only weight he carried. The night Aaron died, Cal found something near the gorge. A bank slip, damp and smudged with mud. Half the ink running but one line still clear. North Fork Savings. Withdrawal. He folded it and slipped it into his coat pocket. He never showed me. Never told me. He kept that paper like a stone in his chest, letting me believe Aaron had stumbled, letting me sleep beside him without knowing what he knew. I went on teaching school children how to spell their names. I cooked stews. I smiled at Trevor's new kindness. I told myself families can heal if you just hold them together tight enough. But the truth is this. Grief rearranged our house, and secrets rearranged my husband. Time does not stop after a loss. It folds. It carries you forward whether you want it to or not. Years passed. My classroom children grew taller, then moved on to middle school. Cal's tables sold to neighbors, to couples starting families of their own. And Trevor? He grew into a man who knew how to smile at the right time, to tilt his head just enough to look thoughtful. He married Lila, a girl from a nearby town with soft curls and a voice sweet as sugar poured into tea. She called me Mom from the very beginning, and I wanted to believe she meant it. One evening, Trevor arrived with Lila and a stack of papers. They had been talking, he said, about the future. "You're both 60 now," he began gently, pulling out a chair at the table his father had carved. "It's important to simplify things. Make sure everything is in order." I felt the room cool, even though the stew pot was still steaming. Lila placed her hand on mine, her ring catching the light. "It's only for your care," she said. "You deserve peace of mind. A trust will make sure you're both protected." Cal looked interested. He'd always been practical about paperwork, more trusting than me. I shifted in my chair, uneasy. "We already have wills," I said, my spoon still in hand. "Of course," Trevor replied smoothly. "But this would be easier. Cleaner. If you name us the heirs, we can handle distribution to the grandchildren. No confusion, no courts. We'll make sure everything is fair." Fair. The word fell flat. We met with Mr. Keene, the local attorney, later that week. He was a careful man with gray hair and thick glasses that slid down his nose. He spread the options across his desk: a trust, a traditional will, division among heirs. His tone was even, but Trevor leaned forward, guiding the conversation. "It's best if everything is streamlined through us," he insisted. "We'll take care of Mom and Dad when they're older. We'll handle the details." Lila nodded, sliding a folder closer to me. "You shouldn't have to worry. Let us take the weight." Her hand brushed across the deed to the woodland lot, the land I'd inherited from my parents. She let her fingers rest there a second too long, like someone testing ownership before they'd even signed. I sat still, listening, but my skin prickled. The office was warm, yet I felt a draft, like someone had opened a window to let something cold creep in. Cal, quiet beside me, finally said, "Maybe it makes sense. We're not as young as we used to be." His trust in Trevor was still strong, stronger than mine. I signed where I was told. My pen shook, but the papers took my name anyway. When we left, Lila hugged me tightly. "Now we're officially a united family forever," she whispered against my ear. Her perfume was sweet, but it burned in my throat. That night I couldn't sleep. I wandered the house, touching the corners of rooms that held decades of memories. In the workshop, I found Cal at his desk. The lamp was low, shadows deep. He wasn't working on wood. He was staring at an old folder, pages yellowed, his hand covering the top sheet like a guard. When I stepped closer, he shut it quickly, his jaw set. "What was that?" I asked softly. "Just old numbers," he muttered, pushing the folder aside. But I saw the edge of a familiar bank name on the corner, North Fork Savings. And I knew, deep down, that ledger held more than numbers. The papers came back sooner than I expected. Trevor showed up one Tuesday evening, shoulders squared, a briefcase in his hand. Lila trailed behind him with a plate of cookies, smiling as if it were just another family visit. But Trevor didn't waste time on small talk. He spread out documents across the walnut table, the same one Cal had built decades before. "Power of attorney," he explained, tapping the top page. "Just precaution. If either of you gets sick or can't sign, we can handle bills and accounts." Makes everything smoother. The words sounded neat, practiced. He had rehearsed them. Lila leaned in, sliding the cookies toward me. "Efficiency is love, Mom," she said warmly. "This way, nothing falls through the cracks. We'd be protecting you." Protecting. That word landed heavy. I ran my hand across the smooth grain of the table, searching for calm. "Your father and I still manage fine," I said, keeping my voice even. Trevor's smile held. Of course. But it's easier for everyone if we prepare. You taught me that, remember? Plan ahead. I didn't answer. My stomach tightened the way it does before a storm. That night after they left, I called my sister June. She answered on the second ring, voice scratchy with sleep. Why does care feel like custody? I asked. My words spilled fast, shaky. Why do I feel like I'm handing my life away instead of protecting it? June was quiet a long moment. Then she said, Nora, love is usually soft. If it feels like a lock, maybe it isn't love. I pressed the phone to my ear, wishing she were closer than a town away. Later, I found Cal in the workshop. The light was dim, sawdust clinging to his shirt. He was rubbing a scrap of walnut with sandpaper over and over, though it was already smooth. They're just being practical, he muttered when I brought it up. Are they? I asked, because I don't feel safer. I feel watched. He stopped sanding. His shoulders slumped in a way I'd never seen. He stared at the wood, not at me. Nora, he said slowly, there's something I never told you. I held my breath. Years ago, before Aaron, his voice cracked on the name. He cleared his throat. I noticed the carpentry account was bleeding. Withdrawals I hadn't made, small at first, then larger. I thought it was a bank error, but when I asked, the teller showed me slips. I felt my heart jolt. From where? North Fork Savings, he whispered. The name tasted bitter on his tongue. It was the same name I had glimpsed on the muddy slip he kept hidden. The same bank I'd seen on the edge of those old ledger pages. My chest went cold. And you never told me? I thought I could fix it. His jaw tightened. I thought protecting you meant silence. Silence can be heavier than truth. I felt it press against me now. Before I could answer, the phone rang in the kitchen. Its sharp sound cut through the night. Cal and I looked at each other, neither moving. Finally, I picked up. Mom. Trevor's voice came bright through the line, cheerful as a song. Lila and I had an idea. Your anniversary's coming. What if we take you both hiking at Cedar Gorge? A family trip. Fresh air, photos, memories. The words rolled smooth like an invitation, but all I heard was a sentence with no way back. The night before the trip, our house felt like a stage. Every corner held props that might decide whether the story ended in truth or in silence. Cal sat at the kitchen table, his phone in his hand. He pressed the record button, then slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket. Always on, he said quietly. If they talk, it will hear. He tapped the pocket once like sealing a vow. I stood by the counter, pen trembling in my hand as I folded a letter. My words were short but sharp, written for June in case my mouth never spoke them. Trevor is not who you think. If we don't return, look in Cal's jacket. Tell the police. Believe me. I sealed it and pressed the envelope flat. We moved carefully, like people already halfway gone. Upstairs, Cal pulled out an old paper map, the kind we'd used on road trips when the boys were little. He spread it across the bed, hand smoothing creases. With a red pin, he marked the trailhead at Cedar Gorge. With another, he circled our house. If something happens, June will know where to look, he murmured. I added the envelope beside the pins. This, too. We photographed documents, deeds, accounts, even Aaron's old report cards, as if proof of our family before the fracture might matter later. Cal's hand shook when he clicked the camera. Mine shook when I packed the memory card in a plastic sleeve. Before bed, I lingered in the dining room. My palm brushed across the walnut table Cal had carved so long ago. The grain was dark, steady, unbroken. For years it had carried our meals, our laughter, our silence. I leaned down and whispered against it. If we don't come back, Remember us kindly. Cal joined me, sliding his hand over mine. His eyes were steady, but his mouth trembled. Nora, he said softly, if tomorrow goes wrong, if we don't come back, remember this isn't your fault. You fought to see what I tried to hide. You fought for all of us. Tears burned, but I nodded. And if tomorrow goes right? Then, he said, managing a thin smile, we'll still eat stew next Sunday. We held each other in the dim kitchen until the clock chimed midnight. The house felt too quiet, like it knew we might not return. Morning came with a knock at the door and the sound of a car pulling up. Tires on gravel. Doors opening and closing. Then voices. Ready for adventure? Lila's voice sang, bright as a bell. I heard her footsteps on the porch, the thump of a bag set down. When I opened the door, she held up a shiny new camera, grinning. I bought this just for today. I want to capture every moment. Behind her, Trevor stood with a hiking pack slung across his shoulder. He lifted a hand in greeting, his smile practiced, perfect. The air between us smelled of coffee and cold morning. But in my bones it smelled like something else, like a final photograph waiting to be taken. Red Cedar Gorge looks polite from the parking lot. Maps under glass, trail arrows, a bench for tying boots. But a mile in, the land shows its true face. We started on the main path, wide and kind, pine needles soft underfoot. Lila walked ahead, swinging the new camera from its strap, stopping now and then to frame us like we were postcards. Trevor kept a half step behind me and Cal, his voice easy, his eyes never quite still. The overlook's up there, Lila called, pointing to a wooden sign. Then she tilted her head to the right, toward a narrow line beaten into scrub. But there's a side spur with a better view. Locals use it. Fewer people. Cleaner background. Cleaner, Trevor echoed, and the word made the back of my neck prickle. Cal cleared his throat, a small cough that sounded bigger in the quiet. We can take our time, he said, letting his jacket shift so the phone inside could breathe. That thin rectangle felt like a heartbeat we'd borrowed. We followed Lila onto the side spur. It was barely a path, just shale, scrub, and faith. The ground gave a little under each step, like it was thinking about letting go. I planted my feet carefully, heel then toe, heel then toe. The river far below flashed silver through the trees when the branches opened like curtains. Lila paused, raised the camera, and clicked us into memory. Almost there, she sang. Behind us, Trevor drifted close enough that I could hear him breathe. He leaned toward Lila, voice low as if the wind was a confidant. If anyone asks, he said softly, we say Dad slipped. You reached for him. Mom grabbed your arm. We all went down. Panic, loose rock, tragic accident. The words were neat, like notches in wood. They fit together too well. Cal coughed again, sharper this time, then bent to tighten a bootlace that didn't need tightening. The motion tilted his jacket closer to Trevor's mouth. The phone listened. I stopped to look at a stubborn wildflower pushing through the shale, giving myself a reason to still the thudding in my chest. Pretty, I said, buying seconds. Obstacles, Trevor muttered, so low I would have missed it if the quiet hadn't held the syllables for me. The word brushed my ear like a mosquito, small, mean, hungry. What? Lila tossed over her shoulder. Nothing, he said. Watch your step. The spur tilted upward, then leveled at a rocky shelf that looked carved by a careless hand. From there, the valley opened wide, the river a bright thread stitching two green hills together. Wind pushed against my jacket and slid fingers through my hair. The sky was the kind of blue that belongs in paintings. Lila stepped onto the shelf first, setting her boots with dancer care. She turned and smiled wide enough to show teeth. Here, she said, patting air like she could move us. Stand right there, arms around each other. The light's perfect. Cal's hand found the small of my back, the way he always does when a room is crowded. We moved where she pointed. The rock felt smooth and wrong under my soles. A few pebbles rolled with tiny clicks toward the edge. "Hold it," Lila said, camera rising. Click, click. She shifted an inch left, then right, hunting for the shot like it was prey. Trevor came up behind us. Close. Too close. I could feel his warmth even with the wind. He set his boot down, and a little slate raft skated off the lip and disappeared. No one spoke. I dropped my weight into my heels. Cal breathed slow, once, like he did before he lifted heavy boards. Somewhere inside his jacket, a red dot pulsed without light. Leila's voice softened. "Back one step," she said. "Gives me more sky." I didn't move. "Mom?" Trevor murmured, the sound sweet over something sour. Trust me, my body knew the math. One step back, less ground, more air. One step back, less Nora, more story. The shutter lifted. A tiny silver tongue. The wind held its breath. "Back," Lila repeated, a little firmer, the word shaped like a push. Cal's fingers tightened on my hip. I felt the warning through bone. I shifted a half inch, enough to look like I obeyed, not enough to fall. Trevor's breath grazed my ear. The shutter clicked. And then the shove. The world came back in pieces, sound before sight, pain before breath. Stone pressed into my cheek. My right shoulder burned hot. My ribs felt like broken glass trying to breathe. I tasted dirt and iron. Somewhere to my left, Cal let out a low sound he would never call a groan. "Don't move," I told every part of me. "Don't even be alive." I let my eyelids fall until the world was only a thin bar of light. Air in. Air out. Small. Smaller. Almost nothing. Above us, voices wavered on the breeze. "Are they?" Lila's voice shook. "Do you think—" "Dead," Trevor said. "Too fast. Too sure." Boots scraped. Stone slipped. "They're not breathing." I did not blink. Cal's fingers brushed mine. Not a squeeze, only a touch that said "still here." They crawled closer, then away, their breaths labored. I heard fabric drag across rock, a hiss of pain. "We need signal," Trevor panted. "Higher up." "We need our story," Lila whispered back, a thread of fear sewing itself into her words. "Say it again." Trevor took a breath like a man about to lift something heavy. Then he recited, each word cut clean. Dad slipped. Mom grabbed him. We tried to help. Loose rock, panic, tragic accident, and the timing? Lila asked. "Early call-in," he said, voice steadying. "We ran for help. We were heroes who couldn't save them." Lila was quiet a moment. When she spoke again, the mask slipped. "After the account's clear, we pay the Ridgeview note first. If we miss again—" "I know," Trevor snapped, softer a beat later. "I know, we can't miss. Not with them." There it was, the debt shape in the dark. It pressed cold against my skin. "You said the trust transfer's fast," Lila pressed. "As long as no one asks hard questions," he said. "As long as the house sells before winter." Silence stretched. Then Lila's voice, flat. "We should have done it at the Overlook. Cleaner." "We did it," Trevor said, the smallest edge in his tone. "They're gone." I counted 3 breaths. I counted 4. I did not cough even though my lungs begged. I pictured the walnut grain of our table, the steady lines, the way oil makes light slide. I rode that thought like a raft. Above, wind turned. A far sound rose, thin at first, then thicker, the chop of blades. A helicopter somewhere past the ridge. Another voice distant on the main trail. The world widened to include ropes, harness clicks, shouts that echoed back from stone. "Over here," Trevor called, voice breaking like a son's. "Down here!" "Stay calm, sir," someone answered, the voice of command without fear. We're coming down. I kept my eyes on that thin bar of light. I made my chest smaller than a sparrow's, rope thumped. Gear clinked. Boots found ledges. The air around us filled with a new smell. Metal and canvas, and a hospital you could wear. A rescuer crouched near Cal first. I heard gloved fingers, a practiced breath. Faint pulse, he said, low but sure. We've got one. He moved to me. A cool touch brushed the side of my neck. He waited, patient, listening with skin. The pause was forever. Then, possible, very faint. A mask came close. Oxygen hissed. Straps slid under me, steady as hands that knew how to keep people. Ma'am, if you can hear me, don't try to move, the rescuer said, voice soft enough to separate from the noise. You're safe. We've got you. Safe was not true, not yet. But I kept the lie of stillness, because the truth would get us killed. Far above, Lila made a sound like a sob. We were taking photos, she said. Oh God, we couldn't reach them. Save it for later, another rescuer said, not unkind. Let us work. They fitted Cal to a basket. They slid a board under me. The world lifted, tilted, swung. I swallowed the scream my ribs wanted. Faint pulse? The medic repeated into his radio. Both critical. Evac now. The helicopter dropped its voice into the gorge, a thick beating that filled my bones. We rose into it, stone falling away, air rushing around our edges, the cliff face sliding past like a wall of old, cold teeth. On the rim, the wind slapped my face. I kept my eyelids low. I kept breathing like a secret. Through lashes, I saw flashes of colors, orange vests, dark jackets, the silver mouth of the helicopter yawning open. I did not look for Trevor. I did not need to. His voice found me anyway, close to the noise, a whisper meant to bless his own lie. Poor Mom, he murmured. It was so fast. The medic leaned close to my ear. You don't have to keep pretending, he whispered, as if he'd somehow heard the truth hiding under my skin. But if you are, keep doing it the same way. I did. They slid me into the helicopter. Cold air became colder. Someone counted numbers over my head. Someone else said, hold pressure, and watch that line. We lifted. The gorge shrank. The world below turned clean and simple. Again, rivers and trees and a path that pretended it was safe. I kept my breath small until the hospital roof showed, itself like a gray hand ready to catch us. Would the lie hold in bright lights, with badges and clipboards and our son just down the hall? Or would truth die under the same roof that set broken bones? Bright lights washed the world flat. Doors crashed open. Wheels squealed. Voices layered. Numbers, orders, names I didn't know. The ER smelled like metal and lemon cleaner and old fear. I kept my eyes sleeping. They rolled me past a curtain and parked me under a lamp that hummed. Hands hovered, gloved, quick, kind. A cuff squeezed my arm, a clip pinched my finger, tape tugged at my skin. Someone said, BP low, and someone else said, O2 rising, and the room kept moving. I listened. Mrs. Whitfield? A woman's voice, warm but steady. If you can hear me, we're going to help you. You're safe. Safe was not a word I could hold yet. I gave the only answer I had. Stillness. A nurse stepped closer. Dark hair pulled back, eyes that noticed. Her badge flashed when she leaned in. Maya Ortiz, RN. She checked the monitor, then my face. Too long, like she was reading a page others only skimmed. Her hand brushed mine to adjust the sheet. My index finger twitched once, as small as I could make it. It could have been a spasm. It could have been a yes. Maya's eyes lifted to mine. I kept my lids low, a thin seam of world. She moved to the IV, to the monitor, to the chart, playing her part. Then she stood where the camera above the bed couldn't see her mouth, and she whispered, so soft I felt it more than heard it. If you need help, move your finger 3 times. I counted my heartbeats. Then, 1, 2, 3. Her breath paused. She gave the smallest nod, like a thread pulled tight, and slipped out past the curtain. Noise swelled and parted. Another cart squeaked by. A doctor barked orders for another room. Somewhere behind the curtain, a printer chattered, spitting paper like it was nervous, too. Footsteps. The curtain hooks rattled. A shadow fell across my face. "Mom!" Trevor's voice was honey cooling on a knife. He was close enough that his cologne cut through the antiseptic. He took my hand, not tight, not tender, just placed his skin on mine like a claim. "I wish you hadn't asked so many questions," he whispered, voice pitched for me and no one else. "Some truths are better buried." "Like Aaron?" I kept breathing slow. I did not rise, but I felt a shift in the room, a presence in the doorway. Shoes that didn't rush, a calm that had weight. "Sir?" Maya said from the side, voice mild. "Please don't touch the lines." She moved between us to check a drip that didn't need checking. Her eyes flicked to the doorway. A woman stepped in, plain blazer, hair pulled back, gaze that took in corners. Badge at her belt. Detective Rachel Monroe. She didn't announce herself. She didn't need to. She let Trevor feel watched without knowing why. "How are we doing?" Detective Monroe asked the air, meaning me, meaning everyone. "Stabilizing," Maya said. "She's responding to supportive care." Trevor cleared his throat, polishing his mask. "I just want to help," he said to no one in particular, to everyone at once. It was so fast." Maya's chart scratched. The detective's eyes moved from my face to Trevor's hands to the pocket of his jacket, then to the door across the hall where Cal's room number glowed on a small panel. "Sir," Detective Monroe said, friendly as a weather report, "why don't you step into the family consultation area? We'll update you soon." Trevor hesitated. He looked at me, at my sleep, and then he went. The curtain side shut. The room shrank to the hum of machines and the breath of 2 women who understood more than they were saying. Maya leaned close again, voice barely there. "We heard," she whispered. "I heard?" Detective Monroe spoke softly from my other side. "If there is a recording," she said as if asking the wall, "we need it secured before anyone else knows it exists." My pulse ticked faster under the monitor clip. A tiny alarm chirped, then settled when I dragged my breath back into its small box. "Her husband?" the detective asked. 2 rooms down. "Still critical," Maya said. "EMS logged personal effects with security." "Chain of custody," the detective murmured, already in motion. She stepped out, and I heard her voice steady and low in the hallway, requesting a hospital security officer, the property log, the EMS bag tags. Words like anchors, seal, evidence, copy, receipt. Maya squeezed my shoulder, all nurse on the outside, all ally underneath. "You're not alone," she breathed, then raised her voice for the room. "Let's get labs and a repeat vitals panel." Noise resumed, a safe cover. "Wheels, paper, beeps." Through the curtain came other sounds, too. Lila's practiced sob, Trevor's hollow thank yous, the low murmur of a social worker. The hospital had a way of turning everything into form and process. Sometimes that saves lives. Sometimes it hides crimes. Detective Monroe reappeared, a plain envelope in her hand and a hospital security officer at her shoulder. The envelope had Cal's name on the label, and under it, a barcode with the EMS tag number. "Logged, sealed, witnessed," she said quietly to Maya, then to me, though I was still asleep. "We'll image the device in place. Originals go straight to evidence. No gaps." The envelope left the room the way secrets should. Documented, escorted, accounted for. I let one more breath fall slow. The act was almost a prayer now. Outside, Trevor laughed. 2 quick notes too bright for grief. Maybe he was talking to a volunteer with coffee. Maybe to himself. Maybe he could already feel something slipping out of his hands and didn't know which thing it was. Could Cal's phone audio make it into the right hands before Trevor realized it existed? Or would a son who'd learned to erase find a way to erase us twice? Hospitals are built for waiting, and waiting makes truth loud. Detective Rachel Monroe did not rush. She parceled out calm like medicine. A social worker guided Lila to a quiet room to decompress. An officer asked Trevor for a supplemental statement to keep the timeline clean. Doors closed with soft clicks. 2 interview rooms side by side, their walls thinner than lies. Down the corridor, a small conference space turned into a lab. A tech in a polo shirt opened a plain envelope and lifted Cal's phone with gloved hands. He didn't plug it in like a son would. He cabled it like evidence. Write blocker, forensic cradle, a laptop that spoke in hashes and timestamps. Chain of custody forms lay like placemats around the device. Imaging, he said quietly, and the progress bar moved like a minute hand. Detective Monroe stood in the doorway, profile still, eyes moving. Maya Ortiz drifted through the room with the kind of busy that tells people everything is normal. Nothing was normal. That was the point. The tech nodded once, twice. On his screen, a waveform grew, small mountains of sound across a gray day. He scrubbed to a timestamp from the gorge. Pressed play. Voices came out of a machine that did not care who loved whom. Lila, bright and breathy. Let's go higher for signal. Trevor, low, neat. We say Dad slipped. Mom grabbed him. Loose rock. Panic. Tragic accident. Then the word that had hovered like a mosquito at the cliff's edge, now pinned under glass. Obstacles. Maya's jaw tightened. Detective Monroe didn't move at all. She simply let the room absorb what the sound already knew. Other files, too, the tech said, scrolling. Earlier nights. Car audio. Kitchen table. They've been laying out a plan and a payoff. Detective Monroe had a second team working a different vein. Bank subpoenas returned with the blunt truth that paper never blinks. Late payments to Ridgeview Lending, a high-interest note with threats tucked between lines. Forged signatures sliding small amounts toward a hole that only widened. North Fork Savings appeared like a bruise in the ledger. Old withdrawals, new ones. The muddy slip, the hidden ledger, the bleeding carpentry account. Threads knotting. Probable cause is concrete, the detective said, more to the air than to anyone else. She picked up a phone and used fewer words than most people use to order lunch. The DA's office called back faster than grief. In the family consultation room, Lila had run out of tears, but not out of performance. I tried to grab them, she told a recorder on the table. I screamed for help. Trevor, he did everything. He's strong. He's a good son. Let's go over the timing again, the interviewer said, friendly as a neighbor. When did you leave the ledge? How long to get help? Next door, Trevor leaned forward, hands folded precisely, knuckles white. We split up for signal, I shouted. I flagged hikers. I did chest compressions when we got back. He paused, eyes moving to the corner as if lines might be printed there. I did everything right. People who practice stories forget the parts they never lived. The warrants came through on a printer that chirped like a small bird. Detective Monroe read each page, signed where signatures belong, handed them to the sergeant whose face had already turned to steel. I watched through my room's narrow window as 3 patrol units rolled to the entrance without sirens. Officers stepped out like a page turning. Quiet, surgical. The hallway outside changed texture. Voices lowered, steps synced. The air took on the weight that comes before weather breaks. They took Lila first. She blinked at the cuffs, then at the paper, then at the officer reading rights. Her mouth opened, closed, opened. "I told him we shouldn't," she blurted, voice pitching up. It was his mother. I said, "Wait, sell the house first." Detective Monroe did not correct her that the order of murder and sale is not a moral ladder. She simply nodded to the officer. Lila's eyes found the glass of my room's window and slid away. Trevor stepped into the hallway at the same time, as if cued by a director who loves irony. He saw Lila's wrists, heard her sentence tumble, and his careful face cracked. "She picked the spur," he said, chest heaving once. "She said cleaner. She bought the camera. I wanted the overlook. Safer." "Safer," Lila snapped, spun toward him by a steady arm. "You called them obstacles. You said we fix the problem before winter. You said the trust clears if they die together. Officers separated them before their marriage could rewrite itself in public. Words fell anyway. Pressure, debts, Ridgeview, sell fast. They're old. They won't fight. Truth doesn't need a pen when panic is speaking." Maya stood a little behind the detective, her shoulders finally lowering. She didn't smile. Nurses don't cheer for arrests the way TV shows do. She just let herself breathe like a person who'd been holding air in a dangerous room. The sergeant keyed his radio. "2 in custody," he said. "Transporting." Through the window, a patrol car door opened its quiet mouth. Metal touched metal. A seatbelt clicked. Lila looked smaller than her voice. Trevor looked like a man whose reflection had stopped returning his face. Detective Monroe stepped into my room, soft as always. "We'll brief you when you're ready, Mrs. Whitfield," she said. "For now, rest. You did the hardest part." I wanted to laugh at that. The hardest part was still coming, telling a jury what your son tried to do with the mouth you used to kiss his scrapes when he was 5. Down the hall, a printer woke again, motions filed, arraignment scheduled, a calendar beginning to grow teeth. Could a plea make their sentences smaller than their crimes? Or would the truth we carried be heavy enough that no one could cut it down? Courthouses don't look like places where love breaks. They look like libraries with metal detectors. The charges stacked like lumber on a dock. The reopened case of Aaron Whitfield's murder. Attempted double murder at Cedar Gorge, forgery. Financial crimes threaded through North Fork savings and high-interest notes that spoke their ugly numbers out loud. Paper does not blush. Mr. Keene met us in a conference room with glass walls that made every meeting feel like a fishbowl. He slid tissues to me and a legal pad to Cal. "We walked them through the story in order," he said gently. "We don't guess. We don't decorate. We let the evidence carry the weight." He practiced questions with me, then gentler questions, then the ones that felt like rubbing salt into a place you'd kept clean. "What did you feel when you heard your son use the word obstacles?" he asked. "Like someone had stolen our family and left a photograph in its place," I said, my voice smaller than I felt. To Cal, the questions were knives we'd saved for too long. "The muddy bank slip, Mr. Whitfield. Why did you keep it?" "Why not tell your wife?" Cal's hands shook as he folded and unfolded the tissue, making a tiny white plank. "Because grief was already choking her," he said. "Because I believed I could fix it without breaking her." He swallowed. "Because I was a coward." Keene didn't let him keep that last word. "You were a father," he said softly. "And now you are a witness." Jury selection took days. Time stretched like taffy between motions. When I finally walked to the stand, the room narrowed to wood grain and the sound of my shoes. I swore to tell the truth, and for once in my life, truth didn't feel like a theory. It felt like breath. I told them about school mornings and walnut shavings and Sunday stew. I told them about Aaron's whistling and Trevor's quiet, about the table Cal carved and the way it steadied us long before I understood how much. I told them about the phone tucked in Cal's jacket, The letter sealed for June. The side spur that wasn't on the map. The whisper at my ear. Pretend we're dead. Then the recording played. The courtroom stilled. You could hear the helicopter in the background if you knew how to listen. And you could hear something colder in the foreground. Planning like carpentry. Measure twice. Cut clean. Throw away the pieces you don't want seen. Trevor watched the table surface in front of him as if it might offer a door. Lila's shoulders had a tremor that came and went like a trick of light. Cal followed me to the stand. When Keen asked about the muddy slip, he didn't reach for metaphors. He reached for the thing itself. I found it the night Aaron died, he said, voice rough. North Fork savings, withdrawal. I folded it and put it in my pocket, and then I folded myself around a lie, too. He looked at me, not at the jurors. Nora, I am sorry. The apology wasn't an exhibit. It was a marriage being reset in front of strangers. The state lined its bricks, bank subpoenas, signatures that did not match, Ridgeview's letters with their threats dressed up as reminders, the trust papers Lila touched too long, the phone's audio with the word obstacles pinned inside it like an insect under glass. The defense tried to sand the edges. Financial pressure, bad judgment, panic on a cliff, love twisted by fear. The jury listened the way fields listen to rain. They took what fell, but they knew the ground beneath was older. When the verdicts came, the clock over the judge's head said nothing at all. It didn't need to. Guilty on the reopened murder of Aaron. Guilty on both counts of attempted murder. Guilty on forgery and financial crimes. The judge set consecutive terms, one after the other, not stacked to look merciful. Lila didn't get the same knife, but she didn't go home either. Conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, accessory, a lattice of years that won't come down because someone cries. Afterward, the courthouse hallway exhaled us into light. My sisters waited with open hands. Maya Ortiz came on her lunch break and squeezed my arm. Not as a nurse now, just as a person who'd heard a whisper and decided not to ignore it. Detective Monroe nodded once, the kind of small salute people use when work and soul are both satisfied but not triumphant. We went home. At dusk, the house was quiet in the good way again. Cal set 2 bowls on the walnut table and then, gently, 2 more. Not for Trevor and Lila, for our grandchildren. Social services placed them with us while the papers learned how to catch up to love. They did homework on that table, the same table that had held Sunday stew, secrets, and the sound of Aaron's pencil tapping his way through algebra. I showed them how to anchor the corners of their worksheets with smooth stones from the backyard, so the fan wouldn't flip the pages. Cal sharpened their pencils with the small knife he'd used for decades, the shavings curling like thin ribbons on a plate. The house felt almost upright. I leaned close to the camera one evening, while the children colored and whispered to the women who find these stories like lifelines. A home isn't wood. It's what the truth holds up. The camera light blinked. Somewhere inside the lens, our faces were becoming pixels, and then, I hoped, a kind of shelter for someone else. What future can we give these children? And can a house rebuilt on truth carry weight their parents never learned to lift? A year is not long, but it is enough for a house to remember how to breathe. The porch in Maple Hollow is mended now. Cal pulled the rotten boards, planed new planks, and set them with slow, careful hands. He carved a thin line along the edge, an extra bevel he'd never used before. Second chances, he said, running his thumb along it like a quiet prayer. Most afternoons, I sit out there with 2 children who carry both storm and sunrise in them. We read. I start with simple words, steady rhythm, soft voice. Cat, map, home. Their mouth shape sounds like they're building something of their own. When they stumble, I don't rush. We try again. When they get it right, I tap the page and say, "See? You did that." Their faces change in a way light can't fake. School sent home a reading chart with stars. We taped it to the fridge. The stars grow like a field of little suns. Cal pretends not to look each time he passes, but his shoulders lift a little as if the paper is holding up more than stickers. Therapy is not a secret in this house. Tuesday is talk day. We go to the office with the soft chairs and the box of tissues that never runs out. We push no one to speak. We celebrate when someone does. The kids draw pictures of mountains and rivers, sometimes of houses with big windows. Sometimes there are stick people standing a little apart. The therapist calls this space. I call it breathing room. Boundaries have new names here. Bedtime is a promise. Doors are knocked on. Phones stay on the counter, not under pillows. We don't tell half-truths to make things easier. We don't tell whole lies to make things quiet. We let silence be silence when a heart needs it. We let laughter be loud when it finally arrives. On Sundays, June and Irene come with stew and stories. We eat at the walnut table that watched our family bend and then watched us stand up again. The kids do homework there, pencils scratching like small animals building a nest. Cal still sharpens each one with his little knife. The shavings curl and pile like thin ribbons. He saves them in a jar for kindling, though I think he just likes the proof that work makes beauty even when it is small. Some days I feel the gorge in my bones, the fall, the air, the hard ground. Then I look at the porch edge, at that new bevel, and I put my hand on it until my breath settles. Second chances don't erase first wounds. They hold them. They give them a place to rest. The adoption papers are moving, slow but forward. The social worker said, "You're almost there." We don't promise the children what is not signed. We promise them breakfast tomorrow and a story tonight. We promise we will be in the audience at the school concert even if they only sing one line. Promises you can keep teach children what love sounds like. Sometimes, late, I take the old letter I wrote to June and read the first line. If we don't return. Then I fold it back and whisper, "We did." I don't keep that letter for fear anymore. I keep it to remember the day we chose truth over comfort, breath over silence. When it rains, the porch boards darken and the bevel shines. Cal sits with a mug of tea, steam curling, and carves small things. Spoons, a little bird with wings not yet sanded smooth. He places the bird in the middle of the table and says, "Not finished." That's okay. The children touch it like they're greeting a living thing. I want to end this the way I began, without decoration. Secrets break families. Truth stitches them. If this story felt true to you, if it reminded you of a person who finally believed you, or a moment when you chose truth over quiet, share that moment in the comments. Someone out there needs your words. And if you want more fact-checked family sagas told in simple, steady English, subscribe. We'll keep a place at the table for you.